You know, the heart of Iron Man 3 is really about a crime fighter with a dark past and a debilitating condition.
Oh, what do you want to hear, man? Do you want to hear that sometimes I think about eating a bullet? Huh? Well, I do.
Do you need a plastic bag to breathe into? Do you have medication?
Nope.
Do you need to be on it?
Probably.
Only to end up over his head while getting sucked into a somewhat whimsical adventure.
I peed on it.
What? What you peed on what?
I peed on the corpse. Can they do like ID from that?
I'm sorry, you peed
On the corpse, and my question is...
No, my question. I get to go first.
Mom, I need to call you back. Something magical is happening.
Where he learns that the real villain is someone that he already knew in a shocking twist.
And I don't know what's going on here, but there's been some foul play. Do you know that suitcase that you gave us, somebody switched it out? There was no money in it.
No shit.
Don't hurt the face. I'm an actor.
You got a minute to live. Fill it with words.
Just a role. The Mandarin. See, it's not real.
Leaving our hero to have to fight to save the person that he loves.
1, 2, 3!
You gotta let go. I'll catch you. I promise.
Only to have a happy ending that just makes you want to go, aw.
To the birds?
Hallelujah.
Where'd that bullet hit you anyway?
Don't make me laugh.
You can take away my house, all my tricks and toys. One thing you can't take away? I am Iron Man.
Yeah, it's a Shane Black movie. Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic here as always, and Don Cheadle further cements his superiorness to Terrence Howard. So much better. I just like making fun of Terrence Howard where I can. And like I said, this movie feels very much like a Shane Black movie, which is kind of different than a lot of superhero movies. However, I feel like Marvel has the one-off films be a little more unique, and I think this definitely is there, but in a good way to me. I really like the way that this movie is directed and written. Unpopular opinion here, I like Iron Man 3. A lot of people like to hate on Iron Man 3. A lot of people just don't like the fact that Tony's not in his armor and stuff like that. And I really, this is one of my favorite Marvel movies. Like, it's up there. Like, it's not at the top by any means, but it's definitely in that, you know, I guess top 10 now, probably, because there's so many Marvel movies now, but that still means something, you know? It's a good movie. I like it a lot. You know, actually timed it out, and the first action scene in this movie isn't until about 35 minutes in, which is way later than most Marvel movies. Like, this is only a 2-hour movie. It's you go a fourth of the way without any action at all, and that's something weird. Just something I noticed. It's not a plus or a negative necessarily. It's just something, usually these movies all start on a big action sequence or have one within the first 10-15 minutes. This one doesn't, you know? It makes you actually care about the characters? What? And something about this movie that I also really like is the idea that Tony Stark is getting these panic attacks. You know, panic attacks are really a thing that are never shown on film, but this movie definitely, you know, covers that, and I really like the idea that Tony Stark, you know, after him falling from a giant wormhole in space in the Avengers movie, that he's, you know, that's staying with him, you know? I mean, that's a big scene that's iconic now and stays with us at the end of Avengers. But with him, it's this much darker experience of a time, like he was probably, I imagine, they don't really go into it, but I imagine he was being deprived of oxygen while he was in space until he made his way back into Earth. And even then, at a high atmosphere, you know, he's probably deprived of oxygen for a minute or two. And that's something that's traumatic for him, and it's something that he has to deal with in this movie. And it's not like his alcoholism in Iron Man 2, which I thought they brushed over too much. You know, I would have liked to see more of that. This movie definitely keeps that recurring throughout the whole movie, and I really like that character dynamic for him, that, you know, that setback, and at times that he just kind of freaks out and he doesn't know what to do, and the characters around him don't know how to react, and I really like that in this movie. One of the things that I often see criticized in this movie is the fact that Tony Stark's not really in his armor that much of it. You know, half the movie, he's just Tony Stark. However, I really like that aspect. You know, Tony Stark isn't a superhero because he found an Iron Man suit. He's a superhero because he built the Iron Man suit. You see him having to make these, like, homemade Iron Man weapons and stuff, without the suit, you know. He makes the little pulse cannon or whatever, and he makes these cool little bombs and stuff. Like, it's really interesting to like try to. I really like when movies like this strip heroes of their powers or anything that they need to typically use, and it's just kind of left with just the person and what they have to do. And I really like how they explored that in this movie. I really like that touch. The way the action is directed in this movie too, like Shane Black, you know, he makes action like detective movies typically, but nothing like huge like flying people. But I think the way that they directed this action is really interesting and good. I mean, the way that it treats him flying, especially the indoor fight scene where he only has the one pulse cannon and then the one boot on, and he's just flying around, and this camera kind of like is locked on him, so it's like kind of rotating with him when he moves, and it's such an interesting shot, and I really like the way that they depict that in this movie. And speaking of well-directed action sequences, I really like the scene where he goes on Air Force One and he has to, you know, save all the people with the barrel of monkeys linking arms together as they're falling. I really like that scene in this movie. I think that it's so, you know, inventive and well-directed. But one thing that comes out of that is that this whole time you think he's in his suit, and then all of a sudden he gets hit by the car, the armor fades away, and it turns out that, you know, Tony Stark's just in a closet controlling it or whatever. Which is something interesting to me in this movie. Tony Stark, you know, in this movie they several times show that he's just remote controlling these things and that he's not really in them. It kind of is a flaw, I feel like, in the Iron Man character now, because why does Tony Stark have any reason to ever be in the Iron Man suit again? If he can control it, you know, wirelessly, like at the end of this movie it makes sense because all of his suits are far away and he's kind of separated from them. And, you know, he wants to go make sure he saves Pepper. I'm sure that that's something that's more personal to him that he wants to be there for. But in, you know, the grander scheme of things in other movies, why would Tony Stark ever be in his suit? You know, that's just danger to himself. Just connect via server from far away and do all the exact same things, you know, coordinate, like, he's able to coordinate, you know, flying all these people and interlocking, you know, there's a lot of things he was doing there. And it's something that just kind of was like, what is this character? Why does he have to be in a suit anymore? Doesn't really hurt this movie. I think it works in this movie. Just later on for his character in this universe is just something that doesn't necessarily make that much sense if he has that technology. And now for the big thing that everyone hates about this movie that I actually super love. The Mandarin. He's not the Mandarin, you know? I really like the fact that the Mandarin is just a hired actor, and Ben Kingsley is hilarious whenever he's, you know, being the doped up guy in that confusing scene. I remember seeing it for the first time and just being really confused and in shock, but it totally worked in that movie. That's a perfect example of, to me at least, of playing with our expectations. You know, The Last Jedi, I don't like how that movie just kept punching you in your expectations. This movie, I think it worked out. And I really like that kind of turn. And I know a lot of people who are fans of the comics are, you know, big fans of the Mandarin, who's, you know, Tony Stark's pretty much arch nemesis in the comic books. They don't say that the Mandarin doesn't exist, you know. In the universe, they still show that they have plenty of hints that the Mandarin is a real thing. This just wasn't the real Mandarin. But that whole idea was actually a lot of fun to me, and I really like that playing with our expectations. However, the other villain, Aldrich Killian, is really weak. I like Guy Pearce in the role. I really think that he's an underrated actor, but in this movie, he's not really given that much. I mean, he's one of those villains that he's a bad guy because 20 years ago, Tony Stark was a dick to him at a party. Okay? Like, that's so weak, you know? You don't get much else about his character. I mean, I guess you get the idea that, you know, he was, you know, picked on as a kid and stuff like that, but it's not really a fully fleshed out character, you know? Plenty of people who picked on her as a kid and don't become crazy. I feel like we should have gotten a little bit more of to what was the real inciting incident behind this, or what other things led up to him just kind of going nuts. And we didn't really get that. Also, the powers, the mental implants with, you know, the exploding things that are exploding on accident. It's just kind of all drastic. So basically they're covering up, the whole reason he hired this whole fake Mandarin was to cover up incidents of accidental exploding membrane things that he had in order to give people superpowers. And it's just kind of, okay, that's a drastic decision. Like, oh no, people are going to look into this bombing unless we just make up that it was, you know, a terrorist attack, even though it wasn't. And it's just such a drastic leap, like, you know? I mean, I feel like there's got to be an easier way of doing that than, you know, faking a terrorism attack, because you fake a terrorism attack, people are going to look for the terrorist. Iron Man, in like 10 seconds, was able to nail it down and show, oh, well, you know, it's in Florida. It's probably not a terrorist. Let's go check this out. Like, you almost leave more breadcrumbs leading to you then than just someone who exploded, you know? I mean, his head exploded. It's not like they're going to pull his brains together and find out that there was like a thing that were in there, and then much less find out that that thing was part of Guy Pearce's company or whatever. Like, it's just so drastic to me. So that's something that the villain and his motivations are something that didn't really work for me in this movie. Rebecca Hall's character, Killian's assistant, I guess, she kind of has this weird turn in her character where she, you know, tries to help Tony Stark out. And her character is just kind of all over the place, and she's really just not important. Like, if you cut her every scene of her in the movie, it would be no different. It would just be 10 minutes shorter. Like, there's nothing of substance there, you know? She's, like, bad, and then Tony Stark's like, hey, you know you're helping a terrorist, right? And she was like, oh, yeah, I am helping a terrorist. I'm gonna help you and not do what he asked me to. Oh, I'm dead. That's her arc in the movie. Like, I just explained it. That was it. And that's something I found really weak as well. But Marvel does, in these movies, they have a tendency, especially early on, that the third act is just kind of dumb. I actually like the third act of this movie. I really like the multiple different Iron Man costumes, all roboticized or whatever, all helping and fighting. There's a lot of fun nods there to things in the comic books, you know, different suits and whatnot that they show. So that's fun. And I really like the idea that, you know, he's Tony Stark, but his suits are just not working that well, and they keep getting blown up, so he has to just keep going to another one. And at the end of this whole movie, he just says fucking and destroys all of his Iron Man suits. I kind of like that, even though they don't play it into that vein. They don't really acknowledge that, but I really like that in this movie. I really like the end fight scene, you know. However, Gwyneth Paltrow, I kind of wish she stayed dead. Just one, it would have been an emotional moment. Two, the fact that she recovers and, you know, she got implanted with this thing, so now she has superpowers and she's perfectly fine, and not only, you know, has these enhanced fighting techniques or whatever, but knows how to instantly use them within like 2 seconds after no practice, and she's become like this badass fighter and just like smacks Killian across the fucking room and kills him. Like, okay. It's just so random. And 3, I just don't like Gwyneth Paltrow. I really, like, it's nothing necessarily personal. I haven't even seen that many interviews with her or anything like that. So it's nothing like I hate her or anything, but it's just like I just know her blog goop and how it's just a bunch of made up shitty products to try to trick middle-aged women. I'm gonna get back on track. I like the end of this movie. Don't like that twist, but I enjoyed this movie overall. I think this movie's a lot of fun. I think that I really like the Shane Black isms that are in this movie. I'm a huge fan of Shane Black. The Nice Guys is one of my favorite movies of all time. Got a poster of it on the wall right over there. Love that movie. And Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is up there too. Like, it's a great movie. Shane Black is fantastic. Lethal Weapon, oh my god. I can just talk about Shane Black for an hour if you want me to. I'm fine with that. But overall, this movie's a lot of fun. I like a lot of the things in this. There are some things that, you know, detract, and this is not a perfect movie by any means, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's up there in the top half, at least, of my favorite Marvel movies. It's a fun movie. What did you guys think? Are you one of the people that absolutely hate the Mandarin twist or anything else about this movie? Do you hate this movie? Do you love it? A lot of people seem to really hate this movie, so I feel like I have to defend it a lot in conversations and whatnot. So, yeah, let me know what you thought about the movie. And if you want to, you know, see my next review, which should be of, Captain America the Winter Soldier. That's a good one. You should stay tuned for that. So make sure to hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
You gotta let go. I'll catch you, I promise.